Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello. We are virtual this week because
Yes,
we
we
are
are.
on the road. If you can't tell from these accommodations, I am at Kripalu.
Here we are.
We are at Kripalu. They are rustic, as is. That is not the point of why we're here. Sabrina, you've been
Yes.
participating in all the things we've been doing. How's it been going, in your opinion?
Great to be here. Thank you for having me. It's been going really beautifully. I see transformation before my eyes. I see people in community. Nothing makes me happier than that. People in community and people crying, people laughing. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful to see that and to be a part of that. So campus is fun. I Maybe we can tie that into Ayurveda and little Vata. Sapri might be able to help with that. I've gotten lost about 4 times.
Well, I mean, I'm just thankful it's not like a campus because I've never been here. So I was assuming it was going to be something like Menla or Omega, and
Yeah.
like an actual like a campus with many buildings and stuff like that. And then I didn't even think about how much of a drag that would be because it's winter.
Yeah.
And then Jeannie's like, "No, it's just one building." I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Yes.
Because I don't know about you guys, but I have been having a hard time going outside because I like take the dogs out and stuff, and it's just like it's just been awful. It's been so cold.
Yeah. Yeah. And the
So
wind
one
gust.
building would make me very happy.
Yeah. Yeah. The wind gust. Do you hear that outside your window too?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
It's
is
crazy
nuts.
today.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. All the layers.
Yeah.
That's what I go to. I
Oh
literally walk outside with 8 layers of clothes on.
Oh, seriously. Like I've taken like we were in Iowa for Jeannie's doctoral program. She had to go to campus for a few days. So, I mean, that was when like the polar vortex was going on and it was like single digits, felt like negative, and I'm just like this is like even with gloves on, I was outside. I'm like I can't be out here. This is so awful.
The only
definitely-
the only person who wants to be outside at that point in time is my husky. She's like, "Oh yes, can I spend more time outside? Can I sit on the porch? This is great."
Right. I think one of our dogs is a Bernese mix, so he was like, "We're outside. Why are we going in already? This is ridiculous. This is perfect." He's like, "Who cares if it's -5? No big deal." Supriya's here with us this week.
Yeah, he's Supriya.
Forgot to mention that at the top. Supriya's here, which means this is an Ayurveda conversation. And like all Ayurveda conversations, I'm going to learn a lot. Specifically Ayurveda and winter. So, Supriya, what's your hot take? How do we survive the winter? How can we use Ayurveda to get us through this? Because it's getting lighter at night. I mean, the days are getting longer, but it's still winter. So
yeah, this is what I've been thinking about a lot recently. So just to briefly recap, in Ayurveda, everything is related to the framework of the elements. And so the main elements are air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And each of these elements is also associated with a season or time of the year. So the season for the air element or Vata dosha is generally September to December. And the element of water and earth or Kapha dosha is usually January to roughly about April. Which for me, and I think everyone's going to feel this very differently in their bodies and differently depending on where they are in the world. But as you were just mentioning, we're in mid-end January and having an incredible cold snap, right? Like it is cold, it is windy. These are all components of Vata dosha, right? Like Vata is very, very cold. It's mobile, it moves, right? Cold snap coming in quickly. And also the wind, the incredible wind that Sabrina was just talking about. And so like that gust of wind, it's all feeling very Vata dosha to me. And so I think it's an interesting time to really feel into our bodies and balance, because we do want to balance that air and ether element. But If we balance it too far, if we include too much grounding, then we can start to feel a little bit stuck and stagnant as we enter the time of water and earth and kapha dosha, which can lend itself to a little bit more inertia. So it's about finding this balance, right? That it is still dark. It is still dark pretty early, and it's still kind of encouraging that need to be internal and kind of cozy up. But as you said, Matt, like the days are getting longer, right? So we want to balance. This is a really interesting time to balance that need to be internal with also just like starting to explore, where can I push my body a little bit more? Where can I maybe go out for enjoy the daylight a little bit more, go out for a walk? Where can I include a little bit more physical activity? So nothing that's going to be overwhelming or overburdensome or over stressful, but just like a little something to start to like push and nudge at that inertia that might otherwise start to settle in.
Well said. We practiced Sahibi Kriya today for our
Nice.
morning practice. And, as much resistance sometimes that I could have to that, it was just what I needed to get my body moving, to get my joints moving, because um, I believe I'm mainly Vata Kapha, and I can feel it in my bones, right? My body, my thighs, everything is craving movement to speak to my bones. And then at the same time, it's good for me to also bring in some grounding, real good grounding at the end. So today we had a beautiful practice to kind of pull in all of those elements to help me out at least.
That's fantastic. And I think that Sahibi Kriya is a wonderful practice in this regard because it really builds that fire element, right? It really
Mhm.
focuses on the navel center. And if you think about what elements will balance air, ether, water, earth, the only element I haven't named here is fire. So what's going to balance all the other elements is going to be fire in this case, because that's the only element not involved. So anything that can kind of stoke that fire is going to be very helpful. But again, it's about making sure that for your body, for your constitution, you're not overdoing it, because
Mhm.
fire can also burn out, right? Fire can like
Yeah.
be very destructive too if it's left unchecked. So, and wind can move fire very quickly. So
Mhm.
making sure that we're using the fire to kind of stoke, especially like the earth and the water elements, and really get kind of movement through the lower chakra system
Yeah.
without burning out, and every person's going to know where that level is for them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had every intention of, I swear, of doing Sahibi this morning. I really wanted to because I didn't do a practice on Monday, and I'm like, oh, I'll definitely do it when Jeannie leads it in the morning. And the alarm went off. I couldn't move. I was so just like sleepy. And Jeannie's like, you can just go back to sleep. And I'm glad I fell back to sleep, because if I just stayed there wide awake, I would have felt bad. But I just fell right back to sleep. I was just so like no energy. Like it's
Mhm.
so hard. Like it's so weird. Like this time of year, it's so hard to stoke any fire, to do any
Mhm.
sort of like if we didn't have dogs, I wouldn't go outside twice or three times a day. I just wouldn't at this weather. I mean, even in like the moderate winter, if it's like 30, 35. Um, so I guess that's good. It's making me do something. But yeah, no, I just couldn't. And even today, like I was thinking about this walking around the building, because like after something, I was doing some work and then I just like laid down in the bed. I'm like, I could go to sleep again. Like I'm like, is this like, am I listening to my body? Like, cause I'm gonna go to sleep, or should I like do some movement to like fight that? And I was at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna not fight it right now because I don't have it in me and I can't. But it's also weird because like when summer rolls around, I have endless energy. It is so
Mhm.
easy to get up and move and do things like all day. And just this time of year, I just cannot do it. Or
Mhm.
Yeah,
I can do it. It's just so hard.
It takes
it's
much more effort, and especially it's cold, and my feet are cold. Everything is cold in my body. I feel it, and through the years, I've learned, like you had said, Matt, just a good winter jacket, some gloves, some wool socks, to take the dogs out and go for a walk. This morning, I was kind of like running around a little bit, and I passed by a door. I looked outside, it was snowing, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to stand just for a second, breathe some fresh air, do a couple of these. And
nice.
Yeah, and it felt good. It felt really good afterwards. It's
Wow,
something
good,
that definitely have to challenge myself to do though.
good for you. I don't think I've been outside since I got here, since
Yeah.
Sunday. I have
Yeah.
not been outside,
Oh my
which is like
goodness.
probably not great.
Could that
You know
have
what?
anything to do with the sleepiness? I don't know.
Maybe,
Like
probably. You know what?
Yeah.
Once we're done recording, I'm gonna walk right outside. Maybe I'll just walk to the car and back, and then we'll see how I feel. That's my little test for the day.
So, a few things. So, one, it doesn't have to be either or, right? It doesn't have to be, do I take a nap or do I do movement? So,
Mhm.
I've shared this a lot. I have a lot of Vata dosha in me. I'm Vata Pitta.
Okay.
And so, my Vata does get very easily overwhelmed and exhausted.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
it's both and.
Mm.
So, I love to do movement. I need to do movement in a day for my body to feel complete, but a lot of times I'll get to like 5, 6 o'clock and be exhausted. So I give myself a 20, 30 minute nap and then I do my yoga practice. And
Mm.
it's amazing. If I had just tried to do my yoga practice, I could have muddled through it, but I wouldn't have felt good. I would have felt exhausted. I wouldn't have felt that I was really moving my body in a way that was supportive. But giving
Mhm.
myself that 20, 30 minute nap to just like rest and then feel recovered and feel ready to like really approach my yoga practice in a way that's very embodied has been really helpful to me. So it doesn't necessarily have to be either or; it can be both
Mhm.
and.
Mm.
I think what
Yeah.
happens to a lot of people is that we come out of Vata season, and if we haven't cared for ourselves enough, we still carry that exhaustion through with us.
Mhm.
So it could just be we didn't care for ourselves enough during Vata season, so we just feel more depleted. So even though we're in technically earth water season, we still need to replenish everything else that was depleted from the previous season before we can really start moving more and before we can really start engaging our bodies more, especially over the holiday season. If you had a lot of engagements, if you were traveling a lot, if you had a lot of parties that you attended or hosted,
Woo!
right? Like all of the depletion, all of that vata air and ether. If you were attending, if you were traveling and you weren't eating the foods that you're used to eating, and those
Mm.
were not as nourishing, all of these can lead to depletion. So, like, let's be really understanding with ourselves, right? It's
Mhm.
it's perfectly normal to feel depleted right now and to just wait and recuperate and recover and really feel like you have a solid foundation in yourself before you start doing these things, because exercise is a stressor, right? So
Mhm.
we think of it as a positive because it is a positive stressor, and generally speaking, because it helps to build muscle. And we can talk about, right, all the different like how muscle is now seen as like a more hormonally active organ system and all the different benefits it brings to our bodies. But at the end of the day, stress is stress is stress. So if we're already stressed, if we're already depleted, adding more stress is not going to be helpful.
Mhm.
It's going to be more than the body is capable of adapting to at the time. And that's really the key here, is that making sure that the stressors that we're giving our body are such that we are able to adapt to it. So if you need to rest, then rest. If you
Mhm.
still feel depleted, then make sure that you have your cup full. Otherwise, you'll start to see it in other ways, right? We'll start to see people get more sick.
Mhm.
We'll
Mm.
start to see, not being able to complete other tasks or chores. So you'll start to see it come in a lot of other ways. And then the last thing I wanted to say was to Sabrina's point. There is this whole concept of like sick building syndrome and just spending too much time indoors, especially if we don't have a good ventilation system. And it really has been shown that we do just feel like more tired and more lethargic and even might get sick more often.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, as you were talking about exercise, Supriya, there was I think Monday when we were here. There's like a small like little couple rooms with gym equipment and treadmills and stuff. So I was like, oh, I have not been to the gym in forever. So I did like very moderate like weightlifting, like, and it's just noticing how like I have to be so conscious of like what I think I can do. Like I, I sometimes I feel really good, but I'm also not 25. I'm like 45.
Mhm.
So like keeping in mind, it's like, okay, I want to like do some bench presses or squats or something. And it's like, I hear Jeannie's voice. She's like, slow down, pop up. You're not training for the Olympics. You just want to not have your bones break if you try to walk down the stairs. Um, but the idea of just like doing something, and I did feel great. It felt really good because I hadn't been in a while, and it just felt good like to get that moving. But also like I was way more tired. I'm like, how am I this tired? I did like 25 minutes of moderate weightlifting. I'm exhausted. So, but I mean, that's probably just like age, temperature, weather, all these things. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, I can't, it's just so many factors to how your body can feel in a day. You know what I mean? And it's just like learning about this Ayurveda and learning more about it, just like a whole nother level of things to consider and keep in mind while you go about your day to like not only stay like replenished, but like actually refreshed and good.
Yeah, and I think sometimes like it's also just about breaking it down, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of things to remember. I think if we listen to our bodies, we can make it really simple. And then even with things like movement practices, what's like the smallest movement practice you can do to help you feel refreshed? Like if we're feeling like tired or brain foggy, maybe it's, downward dog for 30 seconds, get some blood flowing back into the brain. It's an inversion practice. And, you start to feel more refreshed already. So how can we break these down into really manageable components that everyone can fit into their daily lives, and it doesn't have to be like this big endeavor. How am I going to find 25 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour
Right.
to go about and do these things? It can literally be 30 seconds at a time.
Nice. Sabrina, you mentioned that this is Vata time of day and this is not the time to report a podcast or something like that. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, but oh, yeah, I said that your thing had stopped recording, which is weird. I don't yeah, go for it.
Where did Sabrina go? Oh, we're waiting. So I'll show you because this is like a fun
Oh yeah.
conversation starter. This is
Oh, you have a big heavy bag. Nice.
I have a punching bag. It's a good
Nice.
conversation starter on like whenever I'm on a Zoom call. People are like, is that really a punching bag in your corner? I'm like, yes, these are really my punching bag wraps that are
Oh,
right
that's
here.
awesome.
If I
That's
am
so
really
funny.
frustrated after a call, 15 seconds.
Holy
Literally 15 seconds is all you need to feel better and feel energized and feel like you've done something with your body.
totally. Oh my god, when Jeannie and I first moved in or lived together, she had a house already that she was renting, and I just moved in, and it had a huge basement, and there was just stuff in it, and she had never gone through it. And I'm like, "There's a heavy bag there. That's like, do you have a stand? Like what?" She's like, "No, it's just the guy that owns a house. It's here." So like that spring, I got like my tax return. I'm like, I'm gonna go buy a stand. So I bought one of those big stands, and I put it. Actually, it was even before we lived together because I still had an apartment. I put it in my apartment, and the apartment was like the size of the room I'm in. It was so small, like it took up half the living room,
Yeah.
but it was awesome. And this was like the Avengers had just come out in 2012, so I'm like Captain
Nice.
America in the beginning of the movie. But
Nice.
yeah, oh my god, I was shocked how 2 minutes, and I was like,
Yeah.
I am so tired. Like that was
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. You don't
Yeah,
need much at all. It's like 30 seconds, 2 minutes, and you feel great.
yeah, no, it's awesome. I loved it. Let's see, where did Sabrina go?
Where's Sabrina?
Oh, Sabrina just texted me. What'd she say?
Yeah, it started because my brother wanted a punching bag for his birthday. This is like years and years and years ago when we were kids. And so there is still to this day a punching bag in my parents' basement that my brother wanted. I am probably the person who has used that punching bag more than anybody else,
Right?
including my brother. I just basically consider it mine now. But yeah, this one a friend found for me on Facebook Marketplace, and it was like
Oh, nice.
remarkably like it came with a stand, it came fully filled, and it was like less than $100. So it
Nice.
really,
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, so it really doesn't have to be like a financial investment
Mm,
to find something that excites you. And punching bags aren't for everybody, and yoga isn't for everybody. So
right.
find what excites you and do it. And also, like, it can change from day to day, right? So, like, some
Mm,
days it's, oh, I really want to get on my mat and do yoga practice because I just need to feel that flow in my body. Some days it's, I'll give you an example. Some days it's, I'm going to wear my weighted vest,
nice.
I am going to put on some arm weights, and I'm going to take my dog on an hour-long walk with my weights.
Wow.
So, like, and then some days it's I'm just going to punch the punching bag for 2 minutes and call it a day. So it can really change, right? And that's
Yeah.
fine. And that's absolutely fine. As long as my body feels like it got the movement it needed for the day. And I know
Yeah.
that every day I'm doing something. I think
Mm,
for me, that's the goal. That it's not about like, oh, I did this yoga practice or I did this kriya. It's like, did I do something for today? Something that
Yeah.
made me feel good and active in my body. And that can 100% change from day to day. And that's absolutely okay.
Yeah, I think we get so caught up in like either reading things, articles, or influencers or anything like that to talk about fitness or exercise, and you see what they do and they see what they recommend or see what they talk about, and like we think that that has to be it or that's the only way. You know what I mean? And we like almost forget that everyone is like different. Like I can't do some weightlifting things guys do or other exercises, but like I could do something. And that's the way, I mean, sometimes I feel like I rationalize, like, say, well, I did something and that's fine when I don't want to do anymore. But I mean, that's also like, that's what I need right now. I mean,
Exactly.
sometimes I feel like I could go on a 2 hour walk and that would be great. And
Yeah,
sometimes I'm like, 25 minutes is more than enough.
exactly. Right. It's just
Yeah.
like, it's doing something. It doesn't have to be everything and it doesn't have to be a lot. It's just doing something.
Mm,
And I mean, honestly, when it comes to things like physical fitness, movement should be joyful. It shouldn't be
mm,
something that we feel like forced into because then we're never going to want to do it. So it should be something that brings you pleasure, that makes you want to go back to. Because otherwise, like you're exhausted at the end of the day. Why would you even want to do anything, right?
right.
Especially if it's not going to like make you feel good.
I know. If you have to do like, if you to get yourself to do this activity, it's like, why would you even do it? It's like when I used to coach, I coached baseball
Mhm.
at high school for like 10 years, freshman baseball.
Nice.
And the softball coach, she and I were friends, and she was talking about her practice and stuff, and then about like conditioning or something. And she was like, "Oh, I don't really make them run as a punishment, or like we do something different." I was like, "Your conditioning drill seems like fun." And she's like, "Yeah, I
Nice.
don't want running to be a punishment because like that's not they're gonna like want to run, and it's like, ugh, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you make it fun, I'm like, that's a brilliant idea." I think
That's a
Sabrina just came up
fantastic
here.
idea.
Hold on.
Ooh. Hello, hello.
We got Sabrina here for some
Yay.
reason. What happened? Did it not?
Yeah, it just like it booted me off, and then it was
No.
like you can't get back in. You know.
My bad. Sorry, I don't know what it is. You knocked over my bag of organic, not cheese balls I got at the shop. I was hungry today. Um, Serena, do you have any non-yoga movement practices that you do in times like this, being winter, for moving your body?
Okay, yeah, I was going to mention that. I mean, still yogic movement. I mean, I guess I consider all movement like yogic movement, right? And uh someone pointed out that is here. They're like, "Hey, I noticed like you're over on your computer and you're doing your thing and then you stand up and you start to do movement and this whatever it is that I do, whatever comes to me, and then you come over and you teach." I was like, I have to do that. I have to. I am in the space. I'm dropped into work. I'm dropped into the typing, the computer, and everything's moving within me. And it's important for me to, once I get up to do something else, to kind of just move the energy a little bit. So I was doing a little bit of this. Here, hold the mic for me. This was
Nice.
impromptu. So I was like, yeah, nice
That's
little
awesome.
like twist motion. Just
Yeah.
let that flow through me. Um, so I guess it could be a little bit like yogi marches, except with different kind of arms.
Yeah, why
Um,
not?
but yeah, I enjoy doing a lot of things like that. It's really important for me to take that time. Um, yeah, and it's fun because there's I think there's time in my life like where I would like vada spin out and be like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? All of the things. What are they thinking? Right. And it's so nice to have like some awareness at this time where I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. It's fixable and we're doing this. And um, through the Ayurveda training and through our courses and everything, I guess things just don't necessarily affect me perhaps the way that they used to, and I would spin out or go down. I used to call it, the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole.
Yep.
So I think it might be different for each person. What would you say, Supriya? Like, what movement might
Yeah,
be
well,
best?
that's what Matt and I were just talking about, like finding the movement that's joyful for you, and that can change from day to day. I mean, I talked about walking my dog with my weights on, or punching a punching bag. I didn't mention this one, but I'm a huge fan of kitchen dance parties. I will literally just put on a song and dance around my kitchen. Um, so I've been doing that since I was a kid, because I grew up with my mom cooking dinners at night, and she would like play music. And so like when I was a little kid, I would just like dance around the kitchen to the music that was playing. So like to this day, I would just like put on music and have a dance party in my kitchen. So it's like, to me, it's just about finding whatever is going to bring you joy, and just and knowing that that can change from day to day, and your needs can change from day to day. And for me, at least, as long as I'm doing something, then that's fine.
Did you see the heavy bag that's behind Supriya?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I've seen that before. I've noticed that before. I'm like, Supriya's getting it in. So that's great. It's good for
Yeah.
you. Did you tell her what I said when we were about to start the podcast? Yeah, and then I got cut out. I should have just ignored the message, but it's okay. So I had an Ayurvedic facial today.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, so just before podcast here, and then it was about a half an hour, and then we started podcast. But I got back to the room. I was so zenned out. I was so relaxed. They did all of the oils and up through my hair and massaged my head and different points. And I definitely fell asleep like 3 times. And then I had a couple phone calls with some YTT students, and I'm like, I'm trying to like I was like trying to get my words together, and Jessica's just looking at me. She's like, "You need a nap." I was like, yes, I do. It's like 2:30. And yeah, so I was like, not a good podcast time for me.
That's why you said okay. I do remember. Like, I've even looking at the camera. I'm like, you look like you were just running up and down stairs. Okay, now you just like were like zenned out in bliss zone, and it's like, hey, do you mind getting a microphone and talking for 50 minutes? You're fine with that, right? Sorry about that. See, I didn't know you had your treatment. My bad. Sorry. I'll try to schedule this better next time.
Totally. I'm happy to be here.
Supriya, what about food and Ayurveda for this time of year? I mean, like my heart and my stomach goes to like the hearty stews and stuff like that, and I don't know if that's just because like you want to stay warm and stuff. But like, yeah, is there any sort of like food approach or like things are better to have this time of year than not?
Soups every day. We've been trying the different soups here every day, and
Nice.
it's like
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that food is incredibly important, both Ayurvedically, because everything starts with digestion. And then just, we were talking about physical fitness, it's really 80% nutrition. So regardless of whether you're looking at it more from like a Western science perspective or an Ayurvedic perspective, or probably any perspective, I think everyone can probably agree that nutrition is incredibly important. And so going back to this transition time between the Vata, the air and ether season, and Kapha dosha, the water and earth time, it's a really interesting transition here. So I'm someone who loves like hearty stews and long braises, especially with the cold weather. But you might also start to notice that maybe you want that, and it's nice to have the oven going for so long and feel warm. But then when you start to eat, it starts to feel kind of heavier in your stomach. Yeah, exactly, Sabrina. It starts to feel a little bit like maybe a few months ago that would have felt great and you would have eaten the whole thing. And now it's like, ooh, maybe I'll have like a quarter of it and that's enough for me. So starting to notice how these different elements come in, and it's because we're transitioning into that water earth element, that we don't need as maybe as heavy foods. So there's a couple ways to think about this. It's one, we can still have those vata, really like heavy, grounding, nourishing foods, but just recognize that we'll be eating them most likely in smaller portion sizes because that's what our bodies will need at this time to feel nourished. We can also look at spicing our food really well, and that's whatever spices you like to use, right? It doesn't have to be any specific type of spices or spices from India, just whatever spices you like to use, whatever's local. I love to go to whatever's local, whatever's fresh, whatever herbs are growing or that you grow around you. Um, Vata dosha can be more easily burnt out if it is too heavy on like the heat and the cayenne pepper. Um, but that's also really great to invigorate and wake up the kapha dosha, the earth and the air, the earth and the water element. So kind of how to balance these, right? Because that's what it all comes down to, is finding the right balance in your body. So for me, what I found really helpful is that I still make the braces and stews, but know that I'll be eating them in smaller portions because I just feel hungrier a little bit sooner. The other thing I do is I do like to have spicy food. Probably the pitta dosha. I mean, I like heavily spicy food, but then I'll balance that with a cooling element. I'll balance that with maybe like some creamy avocado, or I'll balance that with like a sauce. So I'll kind of have this, or I love to balance with like sweet root vegetables. That's a great way for me to balance because then you add that sweetness and kind of that groundiness was kind of counteracting that super heaviness of, or the super spiciness. So that's something I like to do, like a heavily like spiced meal within like a sweet potato or like some butternut squash. Um, so to kind of like balance that. So it's starting to find that balance for yourself. Greens are always a great idea because greens are really cleansing to the body as a whole. So whether you ate different foods during the holidays, you feel some of that heaviness and stagnation building up from maybe eating different foods. Again, we're going into this time period where there's going to be a little bit more heaviness, stagnation. Greens just really help to cleanse the blood, cleanse the liver, cleanse the body, and you can dress it up. You can dress it up however you like. So if you want to have a little bit more fire in it, then include something sour. Maybe it's a squeeze of lemon on top. Maybe it's what I've been doing or something that I really love is, you get like naturally fermented like sauerkraut, or you get like kimchi or beet kraut or what have you, many many different kinds. So the juice in that is still delicious and it has all that probiotics goodness in it. So I use that as a dressing. I just like tilt it out and use that as a dressing. And then it adds that sourness, it adds that probiotics, which is great for your gut, and it adds a little bit of fire to your digestion as well.
Sabrina just said banana peppers. You do that.
Banana pepper. Yeah, the banana peppers with just I used the sauce with the dressing for a little kick. But so good. I've noticed being here, I'm really enjoying the greens, like the salad every day. That's something I'm really enjoying. Super easy to do. A little bit of sprouts, and cottage cheese. Where would that fall in Ayurvedically? Because I'll tell you what, it's probably been since I was 11 years old when I've had cottage cheese, and I've really been enjoying it. And also, we were really excited about the yams the other day. So it added that little bit of sweetness, hearty sweetness. And I noticed that I've definitely been getting full quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And just letting that be. You don't have to finish the whole thing. You can always go back for more. And then the last thing, maybe you could kind of touch on all of this for us, like where it falls in Ayurvedically, is that this is really the first time that I've traveled and it has not affected my digestion. Like everything is just moving. TMI, everything is just moving and flowing. Yes. I mean, so, everyone says you talk about poop, but everything's, I brought the smooth move tea. Usually like that's our go-to, a smooth move tea to help that. And that's just stayed right in my luggage this entire time. So what do you think about all that?
Very nice. Very exciting. Congratulations. That is huge. Very exciting. For anyone out there who has Vata dosha digestion, they will understand how amazing this is. For anyone who has Pitta dosha digestion, they'll be like, "What are you talking about?" That's all the time.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate where I don't often have trouble digestively traveling. Like just the sheer act of traveling. Like there was the story, Jeannie and I on our honeymoon. I mean, this is 10 years ago because our 10th anniversary is on Friday. So,
Congratulations! That's
thank
so
you.
exciting.
So it was our honeymoon, and we went to Italy, and we were in Florence, and we got a like an Airbnb. So it was like some small house. So we would buy food from the market most days, and then just have a dinner at home. So Jeannie made this beautiful dinner. It was amazing. And then it was like April, and it was also like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So we're like, let's go walk around Florence because that's what they do here. Because they don't even eat dinner until like 10 o'clock anyway, or some stuff. So we stop for like a coffee, and then on the table there were 2 glasses of water, and I was like, I am thirsty. I've had no water today, and I drank them, and I should not have drank them because that was like it was everything that I drank in that water was like, this is foreign. We don't like it. Get it out. Get it out. Everyone out. Everybody get out. Both ends. Basement and attic. Come on. Oh my God. It was so bad. And like the house is so cute because it was 3 floors with a spiral staircase. And like the entrance and the bathroom were on the bottom floor. Then it was the kitchen, and then it was the bedroom. So at 10 o'clock at night when I'm laying down, I'm like, oh, I don't feel good. It was like trying to get down a spiral staircase. It was awful. Other than that, though, I usually have no problem. So that's when Jeannie's like, "Oh my God, my digestion's almost stopped," and like that's news to me. Also, not great, but I don't have usually have the opposite problem. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Um, and I'm hearing when you said about pouring the banana peppers or any of like the sauerkraut like juice on stuff. I realize that I've done that, and I also realize I don't pay attention to anything that I really eat. Like I never really like. I'm like, oh, I like this. I'll eat it now, and that's as far as it goes. I'm not like, oh, what time of year is it? How much should I have? Like, what else should I eat? No, but we would get gyros at the farmers market in the summertime, and they have like a pepper in it, and I don't like the pepper, but I would just take a bite off and like drip the juice on because that was like enough spice for me because I am not a spice. I cannot do spice. I can't do it at all. That's like I watched that show Hot Wings or Hot Ones, where they eat the increasingly spicier. Yeah, I don't know how. Like I see them sweat and like cry and drinking milk. I'm like, I would get to wing number 2 and just like I can't do it. No way. So I don't know how they do it. Um, but yeah, every time it's usually when I hear Supriya talk about Ayurveda, and I'm like, man, I really should pay attention to all this information that I have. But I don't know, either life gets in the way or I'm just so lazy. And I think if I did pay attention, everything would be, God, 10 times. I probably, if I avoid, because Jeannie's going to go out of town in a couple of weeks. And the first thing I'm doing is getting a couple steaks. And it's like steaks and potatoes and like broccoli. And then I'll be like, why am I so tired at 6:45? Like, oh, Mr. Ayurveda, that's why. Yeah, it just seems hard to pay attention to, and I sometimes try, but I get distracted, and it's sometimes easier to just order a pizza, which is not
Absolutely.
always. But yeah, when I do pay attention and when I do stick to it, man, I feel like invincible almost. It's remarkable how much of a difference there is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there's a huge difference when we start to just pay attention to how we're feeling. And like I said, it doesn't have to be like we have to like pay attention to like what time of year is it and like what are we doing and all these different like it can get overwhelming to start there sit there and think about all these different factors. So again, just starting with like where am I bringing awareness to like present moment awareness and how is my body feeling at this moment, which is exactly what Sabrina was talking about earlier in terms of like movement, right? Where am I right now? What does my body need? Where does it need to move? Where does it need to twist? Where does it need to flow? And that's all it is. That's all we need to do to start. I think for me, shopping at the farmers market is great in terms of eating local. I don't have to worry about like, is this seasonal? Is this not seasonal? What should I like? It's at the farmers market. They are growing it right here, right now. It's seasonal. So, we can start to simplify. We can start to take out some of this overthinking and overanalysis because there's so much of that in today's day and age of overthinking and overanalysis. And the last thing we need is something else to stress about and now try to overthink about and over obsess about and over research about and then get lost in and then feel guilty about not doing properly. That is literally the last thing we need.
Yeah.
So let's just try and remove all of that. I do want to quickly go back to Sabrina's comments from earlier because she had asked about the traveling and the cottage cheese and the sweet potatoes. So,
I tried cottage cheese for the first time
wait, what?
this
You've
trip.
never had cottage cheese before?
This is like
How?
this is everybody's response. So my wife, who I love and adore, gave the perfect wife response to. We were eating lunch, and then I had cottage. Today is what, Wednesday, so it's day 3 of like having cottage cheese. I'm like, this is so interesting. It's like I treat everything that I discover, I talk about it and treat it like everyone else is discovering it too. I'm like, this stuff is great. Have you guys known about it? And they're like, yeah, we have. And I was sitting next to Jessica, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the first time I've ever really had cottage cheese. And Jessica's like, you've never tried it before? And Jeannie chimes in from across the table, yeah. And he didn't even know what it was before he came here. Like, thanks, honey. Unnecessary, but thank you. Um,
You're not the only one in the world, so it's okay.
I've always known of it, but it for some reason I avoided it because of what I thought the consistency would be. I think so. I was just like, I don't know. And I'm like, I'll just try it, and it turns out I kind of like it. So put it in the rotation.
Yeah. So cottage cheese. So when you travel, a lot of times it can upset digestion because traveling is bringing in that air element, is bringing in that movement element. So anytime that we kind of increase that air movement vata dosha element, it can lead to things like dryness in the body, dryness in digestion. This can lead to constipation, and once you start to get constipated, then it becomes very difficult. To move through and have an easeful digestive process because basically your entire system starts backing up from there. So that's kind of why travel is so important, or so important to ground during traveling. So I think what you were talking about, Sabrina, is all these beautiful things that you've been doing about moving your body, about eating sweet potatoes, about all these grounding, nourishing practices to really, the Ayurvedic facial and all the oils and the massage, all these beautiful practices that really like ground and pacify and let that Vata dosha know it's safe. Yeah, you're going to have an easeful digestive process.
And start that too before the trip.
Yes,
Right? So
as much as
so
possible.
like, we fall out of practice with things like just touching base with that is like I knew this trip was coming up. I was probably using my body oil maybe every other day, every third day.
Mhm.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to get into the routine because I know that it's going to help me when I get to, my ears aren't as dry, and my skin isn't as dry,
Mhm.
and so that's where I'm at. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's perfect. Yeah. Like anytime you can bookend a trip, it's going to be really nice. And so, a couple of days before you go, a couple of days after you get back, and bookending doesn't have to be an elaborate process. It can really be like, I'm carving out time to rest because I just traveled and that was a lot of movement. It could be, I'm going to take an extra day off from work, even though I'm getting back. I know I'm going to
Did
get
you hear
back
that,
on
Ma?
Sunday.
Extra day.
I know I'm getting back on Sunday.
Supriya said it.
Yeah, I am definitely, because I think this week I start the work week goes Tuesday to Saturday, so technically I have to work the day after I get back. I'll be like, Supriya said. She said like take an extra day. I think you know what? Yeah. So if you get an email, Supriya, that'll be why.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I will take full responsibility for this one. But it's nice, like, because if you take an extra day, like when I was in consulting, having an extra day to bookend meant that I wasn't coming back to like a flood of emails, feeling overwhelmed. Oh my goodness, what's going on? Now I had some time and space carved out that I could just be like, all right, I'm going to take this time to catch up on the projects. What did I miss? Where are the emails at? What do I need to do? And it was much more calming and much more grounding to prepare myself for the upcoming work week, as opposed to like just being thrown into it and feeling like it's a whirlwind and I have no idea what's going on. So that I definitely recommend bookending. Exactly like you were saying, Sabrina, like starting before you leave. To go back to cottage cheese because I don't want to lose it.
I was gonna say
um,
the cottage cheese.
so cottage cheese is actually really vata balancing. In general, cheese because it's heavier and denser tends to be more grounding, and so it tends to be more vata balancing. Because it is so heavy, it can be a little too heavy for someone with more earth and water or kapha dosha in their nature. So again, smaller portion sizes, and also because most cheeses are fermented, and so or aged. They generally tend to be fermented or aged, and that can add a sourness to it, and that can actually increase the fire in it. So that can actually be a little too much fire for someone with pitta dosha or a lot of fire in them already. So that's why cheeses tend to be best suited for vata dosha. again, cheeses are very heavy to digest, especially those cheeses that are harder and drier. So if you get a cheese that's very hard and dry or that's been aged longer, that can actually be a little, even though the Vata dosha will want a lot of it, like they'll be like, yes, give me all the cheese because it's sour and it's heavy and it's gooey and it's
Guilty.
dense and it's going to feel good in them. It's going to be really heavy to digest. And that can then start to create issues of constipation. So having those in smaller portion sizes is going to be really helpful. And then whatever spices you can bring to the mix, like think of like a charcuterie board, and you have like some like pickles, and you have some like spices, and you like kind of add that
Je-
all together.
Jessica asked me, she's like, what kind of road snacks do you want? You want me to get some chips? Do you want me to get some? I said, how about like a charcuterie? You can correct my pronunciation. Charcuterie board. I was like, how about a so we spelled it out yeah, CAR. Car shooter. So we're there with our cheeses on the road and our grapes.
Nice.
You know, I'm just picturing. I wasn't in this car, but I'm picturing. It's like, oh, get the road snacks out. You bring out like a wood cutting board with like sliced up cheese on it. Like, oh, let's do this while we're like that.
That's beautiful.
I'm also giggling at myself because you're talking about the cheese and better, what it's better for what doshas, and I'm primarily kapha. And literally every meal since I discovered one of the buffet like trays has like sliced cheese and like a sandwich kind of area. I've just been grabbing like a little pinch full of like provolone. I just get a separate. I got my separate bowl cheese, and I just like have my meal, have everything. It's like get my 5 slices of provolone.
I'm like, where did you get that cheese?
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, maybe that's why I needed a nap, because I had lunch. I had chicken, 2 pieces of broccoli, cottage cheese, rice, and my special provolone cheese bowl. This is what I mean when I don't pay attention to things.
that might be that,
but we notice the body starts to notice, and like I'm like, okay, well, what did I eat? Like what movement did I do or not do?
Right, exactly.
Right? Yeah. It's been really solid here, like waking up in the morning, planting my feet to the ground, finding some movement, because I think especially when we're on a retreat, it's like, okay, we're going to go this thing. And so I know for me and my energy, finding those moments to kind of like ground and also help to move that energy through my body is so important. So I'm learning. I'm a couple retreats in, so I feel like this is a win.
Yeah.
You're learning at a better rate than I am, and I've been around this stuff for maybe longer. I'm thinking of the comedian Nate Bargatze did a good bit where he's like, he turned 40. He's like, I'm 40. I can't eat things I want to eat anymore. Like pancakes? Nope. I love pancakes so much, and I want to eat them in the morning, but then I need to immediately take a nap. And I eat them all the time. I'm like, oh, maybe do I need to get new pillows? Like, what is it? I just can't get it going today. And he's like, my wife is like, you don't think it's the loaf of bread and sugar you ate for breakfast? Like, yeah, that's it. And most of the time, that's where I am. I'm like, ooh, this loaf of bread with sugar is delicious, but it will not be the fuel I need for the day. Yeah, this is always constantly things to keep in mind and not get overwhelmed by. And like you said, listen to your body is the main thing. Any winter Ayurveda final thoughts?
Oh, I want to finish on cottage cheese though, if I may. Please.
Oh God, this is my fault. So distracted.
I have totally more to say about cottage cheese.
I get so excited. Okay.
So I do want to say a couple more things about cottage cheese and cheese. So cottage cheese is great for Vata dosha because it is more liquid. So it's not as hard, so it's easier to digest because it's softer, and it kind of has that like wet liquidy component, which is really great to help lubricate Vata dosha. Cottage cheese is incredibly high in protein, which is really, really important.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's really great. I recently
cheese.
like muscle tested, and it's like your body needs more protein, so that's great.
Yeah, so not all cheeses are as high in protein, but especially for anyone who's following a vegetarian diet, not a vegan diet, but a vegetarian diet, cottage cheese is a fantastic source of protein if you can digest it. And again, adding spices will help with that digestion. Some people do need to be careful with cottage cheese. So there's two main different types of proteins that are found in milk products and dairy products in general. One is whey and the other is casein. Most people are generally these days, like that's kind of come into the common milieu more. So I think that people have like a general familiarity with at least hearing these terms these days. Whey protein is generally well accepted. Like you'll see like whey protein powders. We can talk about stuff like that later because whey protein can also impact insulin, which is good for muscle growth, which is why so many people use it. However, if you're having it on an empty stomach, it can also make you feel hungrier afterwards. So just a note out there, but we can talk about that on another podcast too. But cottage cheese is primarily casein. And some people do have a reaction to casein. So, for example, that's why you see now in the grocery stores, you'll see A1, A2 milk or A2 milk. These are different forms. A1 and A2 are different forms of the casein protein. And some people find that they have less of a reaction to the A2 form as opposed to the A1 form. Cottage cheese traditionally has been made uh, by fermenting the curds and by adding in that culture to create the curds, and then you add back in the milk and the cream. Most cottage cheese on the market these days is actually made by adding vinegar, so you're not getting that same natural process of the fermentation. Good Culture is a brand that's readily available, and they actually kind of made a name for themselves on the market by actually going back and culturing cottage cheese the way it used to be. So if you're someone who doesn't like cottage cheese or haven't liked the texture of cottage cheese in the past, I would strongly encourage trying a cultured cottage cheese as opposed to just a regular cottage cheese, because it does make a difference, and the curd formation you'll start to find is much more, has a better texture than that which is created by the vinegar.
That's wonderful. I want to give a shout out. There was a student here, Supriya. Just, I am just, Supriya is a wealth of knowledge. And there was a student here, and it was like, yeah, I joined Supriya's office hours, and she just really helped. We chatted for like the whole hour, and she really helped me move through her digestion, everything that she was going through. So,
Yay!
little shameless plug here.
Exciting.
Hop
Okay.
on the online academy and go, yeah, go to Supriya's office hours if you want to learn more. I just
We
learned
talk
so
about
much about
everything.
cottage cheese, and
Yeah.
just here it turns out that it goes well with vata, and helps to balance. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
So Supriya's
absolutely.
office hours, what time are they?
They are Sundays at 4 p.m. And we talk about anything and everything. We'll talk about digestion, we'll talk about foods, we'll talk about supplements. People have literally like brought up like, here's the ingredient list on the supplement. What do you think about it? So we'll parse down through everything. We go through health conditions, we go through, I'm on this medication. What are the side effects that we should be looking at? What should I be doing from an Ayurvedic perspective? You name it, people bring it.
Wow, that's amazing. It's one of these conversations where, like, I know Supriya knows a lot about stuff I know nothing about, but it's not until I have a conversation where it's like, oh wow, there's like a wealth, and it makes me appreciate Yoga Farm in general and everyone we bring into our circle that has all this knowledge that I am gaining slowly. Awesome. Well, as always, Supriya, thank you so much for joining us virtually. This conversation was awesome. I learned a lot, and thank you, Supriya, for joining me too upstairs. We and downstairs. We made it work. Awesome. The Wi-Fi pod. This is Matt.
This is Sabrina.
And this is Freya.
Thanks, everyone.